Welcome back, everyone, to Speak More Fluently. We love to really dig deep into the elements of spoken English, and today we're tackling pronunciation, really zeroing in on those subtleties that can make your English sound so much more natural and confident.
It's funny, because a lot of people think pronunciation is just about getting the individual sounds right.
Right, just nailing those sounds.
But it's so much more than that.
It's like when I first started learning Spanish, I thought I had it down. I knew the alphabet and thought I knew how each letter sounded, but I was so wrong.
Yeah, we've all been there. It really is the subtle things, the nuances that make a big difference.
I like to think of it as the difference between just reading sheet music and playing it with real feeling.
That's a great analogy. So, what are some of these elements beyond individual sounds?
Yeah, what should we be thinking about?
Well, think about what it sounds like when someone's speaking English fluently. It's not like they're just reading each word perfectly from a dictionary.
Yeah, it's so much more fluid.
Exactly. It's all about how they connect the words together. You know how their voice rises and falls, creating that natural rhythm?
Yeah, it's like a dance between sounds.
A dance, exactly. And one of the big things in this dance is what we call connected speech. It's how we naturally blend words together when we're talking. So, we rarely say, I am going to.
Oh, yeah.
It's more like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Exactly. So much smoother.
Way smoother, right. And there are so many examples like that in English. Think about want to.
Want to, yeah.
Becomes wanna, or did you becomes what?
Didja.
Didja.
Yeah, it's not about being lazy.
No, not at all.
It's just how the language works, that natural flow.
Exactly, and it makes such a difference. And then there's stress, how we emphasize certain parts of a word or a sentence. It's like, adding bold or italics to your speech.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Like, if I say, I love chocolate, the stress on love shows how much I really mean it.
Exactly. You're emphasizing your point. And it's amazing how just changing the stress can change the meaning of a word entirely. Take present, for instance.
Okay, present.
If you stress the first syllable, it's a noun, meaning a gift, but stress the second, and it's a verb, to give something.
Wow, that's a great example. It really highlights how stress can make things clearer and even change the meaning.
Totally. And speaking of adding nuance, we can't forget intonation. You know how your voice rises and falls, showing emotion, asking a question, or even being sarcastic.
Intonation can be tricky. Even when I'm just asking a simple question, I sometimes sound uncertain.
It's a common issue, and especially those rising intonations at the end of questions in English, that can be tough.
So it's all about those subtle changes in our voice.
It is. And the best part, getting a handle on this stuff not only makes you sound more fluent, but also really helps you understand native speakers better.
So it works both ways.
It really does. The better you understand these nuances, the better you both speak and listen.
I love it. So how can we actually get better at all of this?
Well, one of the simplest things is to just be a more active listener.
You mean really paying attention to how native speakers use all of this in everyday speech?
Exactly. And you can do it while doing something you enjoy. Listen to an English podcast, watch a show, anything where you're hearing authentic English.
So it's like training our ears to pick up on those subtle cues.
Exactly. The more you listen, the more you'll naturally start to pick it up.
Like absorbing it, like music.
And then there's this really cool technique called shadowing. Have you ever heard of that?
Shadowing, I'm intrigued.
You basically listen to a short clip and try to imitate the speaker as closely as you can. Their pronunciation, their rhythm, their intonation, everything.
Like a pronunciation detective.
Yes. And it's so helpful for fine-tuning your pronunciation, especially with those trickier elements of connected speech and intonation.
This is so cool. I'm already getting inspired.
Awesome. And remember, becoming a better speaker takes time and practice. It's a journey.
It is. But it's a journey worth taking. Speaking of which, let's take a quick break and then come back to learn even more ways to speak more fluently. And we're back to Speak More Fluently, diving deeper into pronunciation. Before the break, we were talking about shadowing, and I think it's important to remember that getting better at pronunciation isn't just about sounding more like a native speaker, but it's also about that confidence, that comfort when we speak.
Definitely. It's about, owning your voice, expressing yourself with clarity. And, one thing that I hear a lot is people feeling like they need to completely erase their accent.
Oh, the accent myth.
It really is a myth.
Yeah.
Every speaker has an accent.
Yeah.
It's part of what makes us unique. And trying to sound like you have no accent at all can make you sound unnatural.
Yeah, like you're trying to fit into a box that doesn't really fit.
Exactly. So the goal isn't to sound like someone else, but just to refine your pronunciation so you can communicate clearly and confidently in your own unique voice.
It's like finding that perfect balance between clarity and staying true to yourself.
Exactly. And to do that, I think it's helpful to focus on the things that actually make a difference in how well people understand you. For example, some English sounds can be really tricky for people who grew up speaking other languages.
Oh, totally. Like those "the" sounds. They always trip people up. I remember when I was learning English, I could never get those right.
They can be tough. And it's not just about making the sound on its own, it's also how it changes in different words. Like the "the" in thin sounds a bit different from the in this.
Wow, I never thought about that.
Yeah, those little variations make a big difference. And then there are vowel sounds, which in English we have a lot of them.
So many.
And it can be hard to hear the difference, especially for English learners.
I remember spending hours trying to get ship and sheep right, or cat and cut.
Those are tricky, but they're really helpful to practice. And when you're working on specific sounds, one of the best things you can do is just, focus practice.
So just really zero in on the sounds you find hard.
Yeah, figure out what you're struggling with and then just practice, practice, practice. There are so many great resources online and in textbooks that can help with this.
It's like having your own personal pronunciation coach. And speaking of coaches, I've heard that recording yourself can be really helpful.
Oh, definitely. It's like having a mirror for your voice. You might be surprised what you hear when you listen back to yourself.
I know I am. Sometimes I don't even realize I'm making a mistake until I hear it played back. It's humbling, but so helpful.
It really is. It lets you see, hear exactly where you need to improve. And of course, one of the biggest keys to improving your pronunciation is just, using the language as much as possible.
The power of practice, right?
Yes. The more you speak, the more comfortable and confident you'll become.
Makes sense.
And don't be scared to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes.
I like that. It takes the pressure off.
It does. Because pronunciation is like any skill. It takes time and effort to get good at it. And if you really want to boost your progress, try to find opportunities to speak with native speakers.
So things like joining conversation groups or just chatting with friends who are native speakers.
Exactly. Immersing yourself in real conversations is the best way to learn those natural rhythms and patterns of spoken English. Plus, you get feedback too.
It's like taking your pronunciation for a test drive. And who knows, you might even make some new friends along the way.
That's the amazing thing about language learning, all the new connections it opens up.
This has been so interesting. I feel like I'm looking at pronunciation in a whole new way.
I'm glad to hear it. And before we move on, I just want to emphasize that this is a journey, not a race.
Right. You have to enjoy the process and celebrate those small wins.
Exactly. So let's talk about some other helpful resources and techniques to support you on your pronunciation journey.
We're back for the final part of our pronunciation deep dive here on Speak More Fluently. We've covered so much ground already, and I'm excited to wrap things up with some additional tips and resources that can really help you on your journey to speaking English more clearly and confidently.
One thing I think we should definitely talk about is all the amazing multimedia resources out there. I mean, there are so many tools these days that can help with pronunciation.
Oh yeah, videos, music, online courses, podcasts, it's incredible.
It really is. And using multimedia for language learning is not only effective, but also so much more fun.
I totally agree. I find it really helps with understanding different accents and ways of speaking, which I think is so important.
It's like it expands your pronunciation horizons.
Yes, exactly. And it's not just about passively listening either, right? There are interactive tools like pronunciation apps that give you feedback in real time.
Right, you can get personalized exercises. It's amazing. It's almost like having a pronunciation coach in your pocket.
Speaking of coaches, have you ever worked with a language tutor or taken a pronunciation class?
Oh, absolutely. And I can't recommend it enough. Having that one-on-one guidance, that personalized feedback from an expert is so valuable.
They can really pinpoint what you need to work on and give you specific exercises and techniques.
Exactly. And beyond just the sounds themselves, it's important to remember that communication is about so much more.
Right. It's about understanding how language is used in different situations, understanding the cultural nuances.
Yes. It's not just about saying the words right, but also about using them appropriately. Like, think about how differently you might speak giving a presentation versus chatting with friends.
Oh, definitely. Being aware of those subtle differences can make a big difference in how effectively you communicate.
Absolutely. So I guess as we're wrapping up, I want to reiterate something we've touched on throughout our conversation.
Okay, go for it.
Pronunciation improvement is a journey, not a destination. It's a process, so be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and enjoy the ride.
I love that. It's about embracing those small victories and never losing sight of the joy of learning.
Exactly. So as you continue on your pronunciation journey, keep practicing, exploring, and never stop being curious about language.
And on that inspiring note, we've come to the end of our pronunciation deep dive.
Thanks for joining us on Speak More Fluently.
We hope you've enjoyed it and that you're feeling motivated to keep improving your English speaking skills. Until next time, happy speaking.